Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the OC Alumni Speaker Series event. Tonight's topic is Technology is Eating the World. It's pretty exciting, and these guys are going to really entertain you with some great tech stories and all of that, I promise. Welcome to the William D. Harvey Theater here on Olympic College campus. I am Monica Blackwood. I am a board member for the Olympic College Foundation, and I am also an alumnus of this great institution, which is awesome. This evening's presentation is the fourth event that's happened this year for our Alumni Speaker Series. This series strives to offer engaging and educational topics that are relevant in today's world. With a show of hands, how many of you are OC alumni or OC students currently? Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming. And welcome to all of you who are guests as well. If you haven't already, there are sign-in sheets being passed around. So please do sign in and let us know if you would like to be added to our e-newsletter called The Lookout to hear about upcoming events. And a little bit of housekeeping. Restrooms are right on that side, stage right, I guess, and if you need to find those. Again, this evening's presentation is Technology is Eating the World, and it will be presented by Olympic College alum Nathan Evans. This says Nathan Hale. That's a high school in Seattle.
This is right.
So Nathan Evans, class of 99, Ed Halda, 04, and Brett Eddy here. Brett is a graduate of Western Washington University Bellingham, which is a college that, of course, Olympic College partners with in many programs here in the school. And he is a founder and CEO of Ignition Garage, a software development company, and Eddy Digital, a technology consulting practice. Brett is not a native Kitsap person, but landed here back in the mid-90s, working for Boxlight. How many of you guys know about Boxlight? Woo-hoo. Sweet. And he was, let's turn the page, a database administrator for Boxlight. He then transitioned to software development, working for Vizio Corporation, which started a 20-year commute across the ferry to downtown Seattle, and then keep going to the east side. In 2000, Vizio was purchased by Microsoft, where Brett then spent the next 7 years in the server division, performing the convenient commute from Paulsbo to Redmond, and he does have a lot to say about that if you get him on the topic. After leaving Microsoft, he served as the CTO for Windermere Real Estate, RPI, and Rosetta Solutions. In addition to driving his own tech startups, he performs technology due diligence engagements for private equity firms. In his downtime, Brett is actively involved in the startup ecosystem here in the Puget Sound region and partners with Ed and Elena Imbach in leading our own startup Kitsap effort out of Vibe Coworks in Paulsbo. Additionally, he also serves on the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance Tech Committee and enjoys inspiring teams and audiences through public speaking engagements. Nathan Evans, not Nathan Hale, Nathan Evans is a principal software architect at Microsoft Research here in Silverdale. His team applies machine learning to massive data sets so that they can be analyzed and understood by people using typical web browsers and mobile phones. Everybody has one in their hand, I'm sure. Nathan started his career as a marine scientist at a national laboratory, eventually turning into a full-time software engineer at a local software firm. He earned his associate's degree here at OC, and then completed his bachelor's at Western Washington University in environmental science. Nathan also serves on the board for the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance and is involved with the tech committee. Thank you both. Ed Halda, over there on the end, he joined the U.S. Navy right out of high school, which brought him to Kitsap in the late 80s. While working as a computer technician at Keyport, he attended OC at night and eventually, or simultaneously, launched a dial-up internet service. Nice. During this time, he collaborated with Fannie Mae and led the team that put the first interactive mortgage application online. Ed's very curious about network security, so he returned to OC again in 2004 and became an early advocate of Olympic College's cybersecurity program. Through his consulting practice, HEED CXO, Ed helps organizations swiftly implement technology and process automation. He is currently the chair of the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance Technology Committee, which is focused on Kitsap's infrastructure, cybersecurity, talent, partnership, and innovation. You guys are a powerhouse up here, I tell ya. This panel presentation is open for questions during the presentation and at the end. Right, guys?
Yep.
All right. So don't feel bashful about raising those hands and shouting out those questions. Won't you guys join me in welcoming Ed, Nathan, and Brett this evening? Thank you, guys.
Okay. You turn it off now. All right, Ed, Alt-Tab, right? F5. And F5. These computer things.
We can do it.
Wow. So when we were approached to have this conversation, the three of us spent a lot of time. We talk amongst technology things, we talk leadership, we talk how can we make a difference, both with infrastructure, with generational things, with education, with opportunities. We live in a world that's really interesting that all of us are affected by. So the technology is invading the way you buy food, the cars that you drive, the way that you're taught, the way that you parent. Technology is a part of that, and it wasn't always. So the internet, as we know it, didn't come to exist until about 1994. So there's so much fear, there's so much concern, but there's so much opportunity. So when we were approached to give this talk, we started thinking, what would we talk about? Because technology covers the gamut of everything that we do. So we have spent a lot of time over the last 3 months, and there's really no lack of the things that we wanted to talk about. So, but one thing that did come out from those conversations was, technology is eating the world. Are we ready for it? But really, we wanted to, okay, so this is, tech guy, we're expecting this. Forward. We really would contend that we want to talk about the optimistic side. Technology has the potential to save the world. There's some amazing things that we can all be about. I love to see the young people in the crowd. The generation is going to be earned and built by you guys. That's why it's so great to speak here at OC. So we're going to go through a little bit of history lesson here. This is wonderful. Thomas Watson, if you've never seen this. In 1943, at the very beginning of computational computing, I think there was a world market for maybe 5 computers, right? This kind of seems ludicrous today. And in fact, there are 50 billion computers and devices that are going to be connected to the internet by 2020. 50 billion. So he was so far off. We have talked about, what does it look like in the future? Well, here's what it kind of looks like. 328 million new devices are being connected each month. That's just mind-boggling. 328 million each month are connecting to the internet. So really, that's an awful lot of change. How do we think about this? What do we need to know? How should we think about this change? There's some people that are just checking out. There's a lot of us who are just waiting, anticipating for that new smartphone or the new device. So we're going to get into it. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation. We're going to be interactive. We want you to raise your hands when we throw out a question in there. We'll have an awful lot of time for Q&A. So there's really no bad questions when we kind of go through this. We want this to be interactive. We want it to be educational. We want it to be helpful. So, number 1, technology will kill your job. We talked about it. Everybody's hearing about this, but we would contend that technology might help you to love your job. So here's a couple stats. When we start talking about technology, you can read, this is going to be an information-dense thing. So for those of you who are slow readers, I apologize. It'll be okay. You can see this. You'll get the link later. So really, we're going to go through a couple things, but on the upper right side, you're going to see, is this a glass half full thing, or is this a glass half empty thing? Sometimes it's both. But a lot of times it's going to be one stance or the other. When we think about technology and using it, we have all kinds of ways to embrace it or to reject it. We want to pick that apart. We want to, because we live in the world of tech, we want to be able to help contextualize a little bit. Washington State, here's some examples. Over on the far side, tech occupation wages. If you just choose to go into technology, whether you're a systems administrator, whether you're a web developer, whether you're a full stack application developer, whether you're somebody like Nathan who got picked up by Microsoft, and he said, and I did this terrible commute to Redmond from Paulsbo, Nathan said, no. I'm not commuting. So he said, no, you can have me, but I'm staying here. So Microsoft now said, I want your brain power, and so then he recruited his friends. It's because of some of that. Now, here's an interesting stat. The Kitsap average wage is $67,000 a year. So when you look at that number, you start to realize that we, Kitsap, we could use some of that opportunity over here. We could use some of the brain power. We need companies to embrace some of this. Our communities would benefit. Our education system would benefit. Our students would benefit. So there's no real downside to that. Well, there probably is, but
before you move on, can we do just a little bit of audience participation? Can I get a show of hands? Like, how many folks would say that your job is a tech job now? So we've got like 4, right? So this is pretty focused on the benefits of getting a tech job.
Right.
It hasn't really answered the question of, what about my job if I'm not in tech? Do you have any thoughts on that? How we can, what's the positive side of AI and all this stuff when I don't have a tech job?
That's really good. I'm going to throw it over to Ed. I have an answer, but Ed, what are your thoughts?
I have to hold the microphone. So there may be a pregnant pause. And it's not because I'm bright. It's just because I have to click this thing on. I have been spring-loaded to automation my whole career. So I'm always looking to automate the mundane so that we in our regular jobs do not have to do the mundane over and over again. We can elevate our thinking and apply our experiences to the work that we're trying to do. So when a macro or a small program came out, it allowed us to automate the routine and eliminate that from our workday so that we could spend more time analyzing the work itself.
I think one of the things that Monica talked about, so when Ed was installing a modem pool, that was when your phone connected to a modem. Everybody remember that sound? Some, right? Remember, and then it had, you've got mail, right, at the other end of the side. He did that, for a lot of Kitsap, established it so people could connect to the early internet in those days. So back to Nathan's question, there's an interesting potential here, which I'll give you an example. So when I was with Windermere, I was the chief technology officer for Windermere. I had to go around and I had to visit a lot of offices. I remember this one woman who had been in real estate for 40 years. And she said, she looked at me, and she was the last question of this session. And she said, Brett, should I buy an iPad or should I retire? And I said, what kind of question is that? I looked at her, and she was terrified. That's what the reality was. She was just terrified of this computer. The things that we do on a daily basis is scary. It's really not scary. You just kind of have to enjoy being curious and breaking things. We probably break more things than we fix. But that's part of it. It takes a little bit of courage to adopt, to explore, to be curious about using technology to your advantage. I think young people have a dramatic better example than older people. Here's another show of hands. How many of you have had internet your whole life? Raise your hand. A couple embarrassed ones, right? How many people remember having the AOL disk come in the mail? Okay, good, half of you. How many remember that dial tone from a modem on your computer? All right. How many people paid $100 per megabyte of memory for a computer?
Oh boy.
Okay, only a couple of us. So that kind of, there's this vintage that happens even with the phones that we have today. These phones that are amazingly powerful, they're not going to be so powerful in 3 or 5 years.
How many people know what a megabyte is?
Okay, good. This is a pretty technical audience.
We don't talk about it anymore. It's
We don't.
so common now, we don't even talk about it in our devices.
That's a good point.
We used to.
That's a good point. So here's a couple more stats. So this is a glass half empty. A machine may not take your job, but one could become your boss. Like, give me some examples, guys. How could this happen?
Oh, I'll give you a great example. This article actually even says in there automation, and I don't know if anybody's seen news about how automation is taking over factories. I mean, this has been happening for decades, really, more and more robots. There's actually an Amazon distribution warehouse where the middle of the whole warehouse is off limits to people. It just has these little robots that zip around. They go underneath the shelves, they pick the shelves up, and they move the shelves to the perimeter so that the people can grab the products. Because robots still aren't as good at picking through baskets, but they are good at navigating really quickly through a complicated space. So this is a case where the people are kind of becoming robots, right? Where they're being told when to grab something by another robot.
It's interesting. So the people are really serving the robots in that example, right? Because the robots are efficient. The robots work 24/7.
Yeah.
And think about who usually gets elevated to be the boss. It's usually not the smartest worker. So maybe some of them need a robot for a boss.
It's got a point there.
You could imagine most of the optimization that's happening in like any sort of business logistics. You're being directed by something.
So
that's really,
here's a perfect example. So the top jobs displaced by tech, long-haul truck drivers, taxi riders, customer service, healthcare workers, warehouse workers. How many people have used a chatbot recently to ask customer service or to order something? Handful? Like maybe a third. So that's interesting. You probably don't even realize a lot of times at the other end, that is software answering your question. It's either scripted or what's happening a lot lately. In fact, Microsoft is doing a lot of work here. It's artificial intelligence that is reading your voice, asking a couple of Q questions, doing things on the fly, and then connecting with you. You brought up just recently the translation on Skype. Is that something you can share?
Oh yeah, so one of the things that I think is pretty cool, pretty empowering, is because of the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence, we're seeing real-time translation between languages become a reality now. So Skype has actually added a feature where you can be talking to somebody, let's say in China, and they're speaking Chinese. Somebody else on your conference call is in France, and they're speaking French. You're speaking English. As you speak into the microphone, it is listening, translating, and then speaking back out in your native language on the other end of the conference call. That's like the Babelfish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's actually happening now.
So that's happening right now.
And it's not going to be that long before it's in an earpiece in your ear every day,
Yeah.
right? You're going to
So
go traveling, and it's
This
gonna be
isn't Star Trek. This is happening right now. You can go get Skype. You can do the translation, and you can leave here and give that a try. So, and it's because of the compute power. It's because of the speed of the internet, even Wi-Fi, and even cellular networks, that happens. But it's also because really smart people said, we can do that. Yeah. Like that's what's exciting to me about tech. So, but here's an interesting stat for us. 3.5 million jobs were created for the 800,000 jobs we lost. There's a huge gap of jobs that are available right now with computer science. We are not producing enough computer science grads. So the United States economy has this big problem. We're not producing four-year CS students. We need them for something like this. So the good news for the economy is 800,000 jobs went away, but 3.5 million were created. And to me, that's a good thing. It's just kind of a supply and demand. But it's also something that we have to embrace. We've got to train up young people. So you guys have any thoughts on how we as a society can address this?
I have 3 kids, and one of them's a slacker. He's probably going to be one of those 800,000. He shouldn't be. He doesn't have to be. Of the 3, he's probably the smartest of my kids. He chooses to be. So I challenge that the folks that are getting displaced, maybe those jobs weren't meaningful enough, and they should probably elevate their thinking and think about how they can have a meaningful impact in their life and on society.
Great answer. Okay, question over there.
So a lot of jobs that are being lost are these factory jobs. And not to talk bad about any half factory jobs, those are typically your lower IQ jobs. They're routine, they're easy to do. How do you train a workforce that maybe doesn't have the mental capacity to learn these CS jobs? What do we do with them? Like, these aren't the smartest of the smart. Some of them may be, but a large percentage of them are going to be normal people who love the blue collar jobs. How do you train them?
A quick answer so the question, if you didn't hear, is how can we train everybody, the entire cross-section of society who might be replaced by the warehouse job, by the pack and pull jobs? something that I think that we can do is we can actually start training and create laboratories early on in the school system. So you could learn robotics by Legos. So even Legos helps you. So being able to pivot that kind of training into every 2-year-old knows how to use an iPad or some kind of tablet. They're raised on that. So I think that business has a responsibility to actually contextualize some of those skills needed and then talk to the educations, talk to OC, talk to the primary school systems to get some of those skills that are built early on. That's one answer. You guys
I've
got
got a
anything?
couple of answers to that, and two completely different sides of the spectrum. I worked with a group called Intellectual Ventures in Seattle that had some goggles that you could wear, and they were helping people in the field rummaging through trash. And the goggles would look at a piece of trash, and it would go red if it was aluminum, it would go green if it was plastic, it would go a different color depending on the material, so that they didn't have to think or know. They could just pick it and put it and recycle it the proper way. Technology was applied there to help maybe a low-skilled wage worker do a meaningful job more effectively. On the other hand, we have a rather large boomer population that is retiring. Where are the folks that are in positions of empathy to help them as they're transitioning in life? There are other jobs that are needed that we're not even thinking about. It's not necessarily a technology solution.
Yeah, good thought. Well, let's take one more question. Go ahead.
on products. And as a result, everybody was happy. Bottom line was protected, corporate was protected. I'm just afraid that here in the United States, with the capitalist system we have now, has to kind of come around to that way of thinking.
And we'll talk a little bit about some of that when we kind of get to another section. And a lot of that is like, we need to have conversations like this.
Yeah.
The
That's a hot
diversity is
potato.
good.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and we'll talk about some of the resources that we've started and connected to, and we invite you all to connect into those as well. So, big topic number 2. So we're gonna go through some big topics, and we're gonna go through some little topics. Big topic number 2, AI is gonna kill everybody, or AI is gonna make our lives easier. Now, who has ordered a ticket on a plane at a thing called a travel agent that had a door in a strip mall? Who's ordered a ticket from people on a plane? Okay, there's only a handful of us who have done that. That shows our sort of experience and our wisdom. Then AI can do some things where if it knows that I like to go on vacation in July, I would love for it to book the tickets for me. That'd be a wonderful thing. So let's talk about it. Show of hands, who is pessimistic about artificial intelligence? You know what the next question is going to be. So we got half a dozen. How many are optimistic about AI? All right, the majority of the room.
Do we need to do like a little bit of a definition of artificial
That would
intelligence
be great.
for folks?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Well, so, you know, one of the things, being in kind of the artificial intelligence business, it's a very used word, and a lot of folks maybe don't understand it compared to science fiction, right? Science fiction has taught us that it's going to be some ultra-smart brain that's going to, subvert humanity and turn us into batteries like the Matrix, right? Most of what we actually have today when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's like one facet of intelligence. It's not a complete unit. It's not a smart entity in the cloud, right? It's like if you think about, like if intelligence is like a cube, like all of our facets of artificial intelligence, it's like one face of the cube. We don't have the whole thing, right? So for example, A key piece of artificial intelligence right now is the speech-to-text and translation that makes up that Skype thing I was talking about earlier.
okay.
Another key part of it is image recognition, where your photos, Google can tell you exactly who's in every single photo you upload to Google Photos, right? Those are very specific facets of artificial intelligence, but we're quite a long ways off from a being that can reason and dominate us, that I think a lot of people are afraid of, right?
And that's the question. There's a thing in AI conversation called the singularity. What is the singularity?
Oh, yeah, so it's this point at which, theoretically, the technology gets so good and so high fidelity that we can upload our own consciousness into the cloud, and then suddenly we merge, and there's like this weird thing, I don't know what's human and what's
Right.
robot, right?
So quite often, the singularity is also consciousness. So you have an artificial intelligence that thinks, that reasons, that is indistinguishable from a human, and so then we, as a society, will start debating what is human, what is humanhood. So that's a conversation, and ethicists are really involved in that right now. So,
Did anybody watch the movie Her, Spike
Yeah.
Jonze?
So my question is built right on this. I think that the idea of you're training the AI based on what's out there, and we have so much dysfunction within our society. How do we train that out, or who decides? And that's where the optimistic pessimistic comes from. And how will we work to kind of guard against
so yeah,
building more
That's a big topic right now.
again, so to kind of rephrase the question for those who haven't heard, really, what do humans play in the evolution and building of that artificial intelligence thing? Do you have a thought on that one, Ed?
That's where the big fear is. It's going to recognize our dysfunction and our inability to do it ourselves, so it's going to do it better than we can, and it may do it at our downfall. And that's the real concern. And I think that we're quite a ways off from that level of consciousness with AI. What we can agree is, we were talking about this yesterday. I had a friend whose father-in-law would go on this little road show, almost like a vaudeville act, and he would play chess on stage, and he'd play 3 games simultaneously, blindfolded. And he'd win them all, and it was pretty fascinating. Like, how are you keeping track of all that in your head? With AI, they can play an infinite number of chess games blindfolded and win every time. So they're going to be far more capable of thought than we're capable of. So how do we program and use that to our advantage without it being driven by fear or whether or not they're going to capture our weaknesses for sure and exploit them, and probably our dysfunction? Some of it can be used for good.
It's that social science.
And there's a fascinating thing you can go online. Everybody can go Google. I think it's artificial intelligence safety test or something like that. Here's how it works. You go in and you have choice A or B, you human. And on the left, choice A is a baby in a stroller in a crosswalk. On option B is an elderly woman walking across with a stroller. You, human, have to choose which one dies.
It's the trolley problem.
It's a trolley problem. So the data goes into the algorithm that trains what our ethics are. It's a hard question. A question back there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? So what we're doing is we're trying to train the computer, which all software is a 1 and a 0. It all comes down to trillions and trillions of ones and zeros. It's very much of a binary state. So what we're doing is we are creating and training the algorithm, which is the computer, to be able to have some kind of value system that is has deterministic. It's probabilities. So math is important in the future. And what we can do as a society is help everybody get less concerned about math. Some people are good at it, some people are bad, but it's usually this cultural thing more than anything. Did you have a question right there? Yeah? Good for you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point. So I can be, so you're saying I can be pessimistic on one hand, but I can also be optimistic. That's a great call to get involved. Like to learn more, to teach yourself, to speak up, to write things. We need your brain power plugged in. So thanks for asking the question. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, so a couple of things about AI. This was a study done. We're going to go through some stats. The reds are pessimism, the greens are optimism, and the yellows are kind of in between. I'm a little bit of both. Kind of interesting. Look at the scale of those bubbles. 8 AI predictions for 2018. Number 1, AI will impact employers before it impacts employment. So if you're a W-2 worker and you just get a paycheck, it's not going to impact you so much as it is the boss who's got to improve margin, who's got to make profitability, who's got to do things better, cheaper, faster. Back to the point of capitalism, it's right there. Artificial intelligence is going to impact this dramatically. Here's a glass half full question. Funding and investment into artificial intelligence is going big. So we talk about this in 6-month startup in Startup Kitsap. We would love some really smart computer science students to come out of Olympic College, to come out of Western on the peninsulas, to really champion this. And then we've got some resources we can connect you to, some investors. Seattle is a hotbed of technology, and so artificial intelligence is getting an awful lot of attention right now. So this is a Google Trends. This is kind of a fun thing. On Google Trends, you can actually plot what is the zeitgeist? What is America thinking about? Here are 3 things that I put. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, robots. Robots had the highest spike. I don't know what that spike was over there. After July, there's a lot of people looking at robots. I have no idea why. But here's an interesting point. We care a lot more about puppies than we do AI or robots or artificial intelligence. 48 times more. So don't worry, the singularity is not here. Skynet is not going to happen anytime soon. So, okay, guys, should we be happy about AI or should we be depressed about AI? Break it apart.
I'd love to give a couple of kind of Microsoft shill answers to that. If you don't mind.
I'd love to.
I'm super excited about how much this company is doing to empower people with AI. Mm-hmm. And a couple of examples that I just love are, we've been launching multiple programs called AI for blank, something good. AI for Earth, mm-hmm. AI for humanitarian aid, AI for social good. And one of the ones that I'm just thrilled about is called AI for accessibility. Mm-hmm. The idea that we can use technology to increase access for all people of all abilities. And we've got a couple of apps that have been coming out. One of them, it actually, you can hold your phone around and walk around the world, and because it can use that image recognition and recognize what the world is, and then use that interpretation and turn it into speech, mm-hmm. it can actually narrate the world for people with low vision.
It's powerful.
Isn't it amazing?
It's powerful, yeah.
Another thing that really excites me, and this actually is going to impact places like OC, is automatic closed captioning as mm-hmm. somebody delivers a lecture. So you'll have the slides up and you're in class, and if you've got deaf or hard of hearing folks in your class, automatic closed captioning is happening right now because of that real-time interpretation and translation. That's AI to like augment humans, and that's pretty exciting.
That is fantastic. That's good.
I'll go half full and play on the capitalism one, since we're going to do this little counterpoint. I help implement technology for sales organizations to streamline their ability and accelerate sales and revenue. So obviously, I'm helping the capitalistic side of humanity. We implemented some software called Conversica, which helps to have an email engagement with somebody. So the person receiving this email, which is typically viewed as spam, it's now Rebecca. And Rebecca is someone that it looks like you're just having a conversation. Regardless of how you reply, It learns through all of the conversations to give you a more meaningful reply so that you can get better engagement. You're trying to get that person signed up for a demo and convert them into a deal before you have a real person dialing for dollars and doing the old cold calling thing that you're getting used to. AI is being purposed for that reason. Is it bad? Is it good? It's helping to drive sales for companies that are answering to a board of directors and shareholders.
Mm-hmm. So here's an interesting AI question that I would love to benefit me. I'll take that glass half empty and I'll go back to the glass half full. I guess it was half full, wasn't it? So I would love when Delta has a delay and then I have to call customer service and say, I had 2-hour delay on my flight. What can you do for me? If AI can say, hey, I'm going to give you a free ticket, I'm going to be happy. If I have to wait in line or wait on the phone for 30 minutes, I would rather have AI answer my question today. Like, does that sound attractive to anybody else? I mean, that's a good thing? A couple of nods. A couple of the rest of you are kind of nervous that it's going to take over the world. Okay, so number 3, we're going to talk about trust, because this is in our news cycle. We're talking about the election of 2016. We're talking about trust in the election of 2020. So I really can't trust anything online, or I'll be able to verify anything online. So let's break it down. So is tech making us smarter? Here's a glass half full perspective. Technology in a lot of ways is making us smarter. Is there anybody in the room who can speak Latin? Did you study Latin in school? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, we have a couple of people. Okay, good. So we can look up, and I can do an automatic translation of Latin to English. That's interesting. Is it making me smarter? Maybe, maybe not. I didn't have to memorize, but I have it accessible more than any other generation in history has. Is technology making us dumber or smarter? Here's another article. It's kind of, well, sort of both. You know, in some ways, you haven't gotten smarter. The internet just makes you think that you have. We all have experienced that. We actually have a game in our house. Somebody asks a question that clearly could be answered by Mr. Google. It's their responsibility to go look it up on Google. It's not our responsibility to receive the question and then go Google it.
But do you think it matters, right? Like,
right.
Does it matter if I'm more or less smart if it's at least making me more effective? Maybe it doesn't matter, right?
Maybe it doesn't matter, right? Is it a good use of your time to spend a year learning Latin, or having a computer that can always show you Latin?
Right. It's the difference between information and knowledge. What do I do with that information? How do I apply it?
Right.
Where I got it from is irrelevant. I mean, I'm not looking up, I bought an encyclopedia. I was probably the last generation to buy an encyclopedia.
Yeah. Okay, who has bought an encyclopedia in this room?
That's not fair. We have people
Who's never heard of an encyclopedia in this room? Who looked at Wikipedia as your very first research article? Oh, come on, guys. I know that you were looking up on Wikipedia. Goodness. So which one of you wants to describe what is deepfakes?
Oh, I guess I can talk about it. It's this idea that because we've got all this great technology that can synthesize imagery, that can interpret imagery, that maybe it can get to the point where we can generate completely new imagery that is not real and then fool people. And I think you've got an example here, a couple of these deep fakes, one with Mark Zuckerberg, another one, this one with Obama. Jordan Peele, maybe you've seen this video or go search for it later. Jordan Peele is like sitting in a chair saying a bunch of things, and the video is being synthesized to make it look like Obama is saying those things. So there's this real fear, especially when we start talking about how things spread virally on social media, that if something is put out there that has been synthesized by AI because of a bad actor who is kind of feeding it inputs, people could believe a lot of things that are just nowhere near true.
Right. So that's a really interesting thing. So I would argue as the citizenry, we have a responsibility to not just take everything at face value. If we see something that seems a little off, we have a responsibility to go research it. This is right now, for the three of us, we can pretty much tell because a little bit of the facial expressions, there's a little fakery about it. Yeah. We're maybe not a year or two away from where we're not going to be able to tell the difference.
Well, and another thing too is I think everybody in this room is going to start seeing a whole lot about deep fakes in the news as we get towards another election and a lot of just controversial stuff. But remember that people have been able to do this with Photoshop and video editing software for 2 decades now anyway. It's already happening. So there's a little bit of fear-mongering going around about the term deepfakes. social media allows things to propagate virally enough that even hand-built stuff is already something we need to be aware of.
Right.
Social media has been completely weaponized, and our own country has weaponized fake news. You can see an article today, pick any one, and I guarantee you, you're going to now question it. Is this even real? I don't even know. It could be from a completely valid source and a completely valid writer, but you, in the back of your mind, are thinking, is it real or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
That's a good question, and I can't tell you why. Let's hang on to that question, and Ed's going to handle it. And
In
I
the
think
cybersecurity
and then,
section.
shh, don't tell them about
Give me enough
cybersecurity.
time to make something up.
Right, but that's a great question. Uh-oh. There we go. So a couple more stats. So we're talking about trust, this whole notion of can we trust what we hear? We're getting this information full speed. We didn't ask for it. There's a user experience thing called the infinite scroll. When you get locked into Facebook and you're scrolling, when you get locked into Instagram, you're scrolling. That's called the infinite scroll. 75% of people on this survey said that social media companies were second only to cyber criminals when it came to fueling online trust. The majority of people who live and get their news from social media, 75% of them are saying, I don't trust you. Now that's interesting. We have this really interesting dynamic caused by technology that we have never had before. Here's another one about why you should not trust online reviews. There's some really interesting stats out there of the reviews for that barbecue that you bought on Amazon. They're actually all purchased reviews. So if 75 people gave it 5 stars and you think that's a great barbecue, what if they're bought and they're fake? But it's the review economy. So we're not quite armed to be able to handle this yet. All right, so what do we do, guys? Like, how can we trust online? What are some techniques we can use?
Well, one thing I would, just an initial response to the things like the reviews is, the platform providers depend on us having good experiences with the tools that they provide, right? So if I'm Amazon and somebody keeps coming to my site and buying something and it turns out the reviews were fake and they get a garbage product, people are gonna stop buying stuff there. So they're putting a huge amount of investment into solving that kind of a problem. Again, ironically, using AI. So they're looking for the types of statistical traits that might show up in a review that's fake and flag that versus the body of known real reviews that they can use to train that AI.
So are there certain...
Sure.
So you're hungry for third-party verification that store...
Right.
Right. I love that. If you didn't hear that, it said most of the internet, those reviews are written by HAG writers, H-A-G.
Hack.
Hack, H-A-C-K. Yeah. Yeah, they're writing for money. They're not writing for a legitimate opinion or a qualified opinion. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, it just gets down to basic common sense that when you read something online, there's often a financial incentive behind it, and you have to be aware of that, right?
Right.
So we've all heard trust but verify. Today, it's verify in order to trust. But what do you have at your disposal that allows you to verify anything? We give up our identification. All of social media is somebody else owning your identification. You do not own your identification. Someone can steal it and use it for whatever purpose they want. We're going to be talking about this in just a little bit, but I am extremely bullish on blockchain. How many people here know or think blockchain is cryptocurrency? Perfect. Blockchain is not cryptocurrency. And blockchain is this wonderful technology that can be weaponized against people that are trying to take our trust, right? And trying to weaponize that against us. And that's something I think we should all explore a little bit deeper.
So we're running a little bit over, so I'm going to kind of like hustle us through. We have some time for Q&A, but we still have a lot of fun content. So number 4, are you ready? So we usually go for, here's a big topic, put it up there. Cybersecurity is crucial, and the answer is, yep. Yes, it's very crucial. It's a big deal. So Amazon admits that it has kept some Alexa recordings even when users delete them. And NPR, there's a big article right now that's talking about this. You can almost open up any news magazine, they'll talk about cybersecurity in some form. Another, same survey, 53% are more concerned about their online privacy than they were a year ago. Just a couple days ago, 100 million people were hacked from a Capital One account. So Equifax settlement we just went through. So literally in the last 7 days, we have Frontline News that's talking about cybersecurity. 49% say their distrust has caused them to lose or to not disclose personal information or to be less open online, to be less authentic, to be less engaged. And then so another one, there's this thing called the dark web. So anybody who's in cybersecurity understands this. It's this whole communication network that happens underneath the scene. Your identity is worth somewhere between $40 and $80 if you have a great credit history, if you have good payment, you have made a lot of money, your online identity is worth about $80. The reason for that is bad actors will pay for your identity to be able to go get loans in your name, get credit cards, get material gain. That exists. That has been going on for 20 years. It's always this fight, the white hats versus the black hats. And so if you really want to get into that space, any of us can talk to you and like point you at it, but it's happening. It's this cybersecurity war that's happening every single day.
Have folks here gotten those like postcards in the mail? It says, you know, you were part of a data breach and we're offering you 2 years of identity theft insurance, whatever. Yeah, sign up for that. Do it. You know,
Yeah.
I really do think we're getting pretty close to a point where that's going to be a regular part of our normal insurance. We have insurance for our houses and for our cars. We're going to need identity theft insurance as part of our regular insurance matrix, like pretty soon in our world. But right now, the good news is you can get it for free most of the time because you've probably already been part of a data breach.
And you most likely you're already hacked.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a legit. Go, one question.
The Equifax hack, they offer you then free Equifax like insurance.
Uh-huh.
Sign up for that, you waive your right to sue them later.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
So
that's-
consequences, understand what you're getting into, yeah. Yep, last slide.
So what do you do, just on the cybersecurity part, what I think we can do today versus to get at your question is a little bit deeper and broader. But everyone here should have a password manager of some sort. You should not be writing them down somewhere. They should not be under your keyboard. These are table stakes. A password manager. We were talking about this the other day. Probably the most important password is your email password, because your email is used to retrieve or change your passwords.
For every other password.
For every other password. So you should definitely have a password manager. You should obviously have an antivirus or anti-malware. That is table stakes. You absolutely need to start thinking about your own personal VPN, a virtual private network. I have one on my phone. I don't connect to any public Wi-Fi ever unless I'm using my VPN. So that no matter what I'm doing, if I'm just accessing my bank or paying somebody on using Venmo or ordering a pizza, it doesn't matter. I'm on a VPN. You guys should absolutely always be on a personal VPN. Cost you $1 a month. It is well worth it. Now, the last one is still something yet to be offered widespread, and that is your ID. You should own your identification. You don't currently own your identification, but you totally should. Life ID is a blockchain-based identification platform, is an example of empowering you and giving you back ownership of your identification, and that's absolutely something we should all be looking at.
So for the sake of time, let's press on. Number 5, the world is getting worse. Now this is an important conversation. The news will tell you that the world's getting worse. Every media resource you connect to will tell you the world's getting worse. I want us to use data, and I want us to evaluate a couple of these key measurements. And let's decide together, is the world getting worse? Or is the world getting better? Point number 1, we talked about it. Is technology eating the world, or does technology have the potential to save the world? Einstein has a great quote. It has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. That's a wonderful quote. It really isn't about the tech. It's not about the fear of what the tech can do. The solution lies with us. So here's 23 charts and maps that show that the world is getting better. Number one, extreme poverty has fallen dramatically worldwide. We don't talk about that in the news very much, do we? Number two, hunger is falling. In the developing world, it's fallen more dramatically in the last decade and 20 years than it ever has in history. The news doesn't report that. Number three, life expectancy is rising. In the developing countries, life expectancy is dramatically increasing, primarily because of medicine, because of nutrition, because of a lack of conflict. Education. Number four, child mortality is down. I mean, look at the graph. Up to 2017, child mortality is getting better every year. Even the thing that's in the news all the time in the US is death by assault or by guns. Even in the US, it's down. One of the things we talked about on this one was this still staggering the height of that orange graph, which is the US. But look at the decline. From 1980 to today, we have gotten increasingly better. So these stats, one of the things that we live in a world of data. We live in a world of technology leadership, but we also live in a world of data. So we owe it to ourselves to look at the data. What does the data say? Another stat, more people are going to school for longer, back to education. We don't talk about that. That is not spoken in the news nearly enough. Access to the internet is rising. The next billion people to come onto the internet are not going to come on with a web browser like we probably did. They're going to come online with a very inexpensive feature phone that's not a smartphone. They have access to all those Wikipedia articles. So the ASCII-based text can come across. They can look up educational things. It'll go across a very thin cellular network. The next billion people coming onto the internet are going to do it through that. And this is going to be, micro pennies of a transaction for them to pay to be on the internet, if not completely free. So maybe things aren't all that bad. Talk to us about the echo chamber. Why is media telling us everything is so bad?
Well, I think it goes back to that comment about financial incentive, right? Right now on the internet, people are paid by click, right? They're not paid by what is genuinely newsworthy. They're paid by what will get you hooked and engaged, right? So those are good examples. What are the top two ways that we're all going to die? It's either cancer or heart disease. That's the truth, right? But what would the news make you believe? It's that it's some form of violence or
terrorism,
right?
or
so
getting shot.
Again, realizing that everything out there has a financial incentive, and they're not necessarily going to report the things that actually are reality, right? You need that kind of data-driven stuff. By the way, really great book that has a whole bunch of those types of charts. It's called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. He was a Swedish statistician, and you might have seen his TED Talks where he's just animated and he's like, in front of these screens showing how much better things are getting around the world. Highly recommend that.
It's really good.
There's also an emotional payment in that we still want to share things or post things where we get a bunch of likes in return as well. And both of those are kind of a little bit of the ugly side of our insecurity and how we need that affirmation. So we're looking for all sorts of different types of payment, whether it's driven by capitalism or if it's driven by our need to be accepted and to be loved. My answer to this is we absolutely must engage in shaping the future, or we will become slave to its evolution. Hands down.
Good. Wow, that'd be a great bumper sticker. I like that. Okay.
A bit wordy for a bumper sticker.
Yeah, those are good. So, okay, so now we're going to do something kind of fun. We're leaving the big topics because technology is invading everything, and we're going to go to, oh, look, wait, don't go there, don't go there, don't look at that. So we're going to talk about this, the rapid fire hype machine. So, Ed, what is the Gartner hype cycle?
This is really around technology where it's basically saying, hey, we've got this great idea, and it goes through this huge spike, and everyone's like, oh my God, cryptocurrency, it's the best. Blockchain, well, I don't understand, but cryptocurrency, it's going to replace all of our other contrived fiat. But then all of a sudden it sort of dips down because all these expectations weren't met. That's the trough of disillusionment. Until finally it starts to work a little bit and people start to get it. Oh, it's just a different form of contrived fiat and there's some trust built into it. Oh, okay, maybe that'll work, until it finally gets to this plateau of productivity and it becomes useful and you're like, okay. Now, not all technology falls into this. Some of it absolutely is just hype and it just crashes and burns. But a lot of it goes through this. This is fairly typical. You won't see a lot that just goes on a straight spike up.
Yeah, so we're going to tackle a couple of them, and I unfortunately gave you the first one. Virtual reality. All right, so show of hands, who loves virtual reality? We got one. Awesome, we got two. All right, the rest of you, I want to ask you, you're probably ambivalent about this. Hype or legit?
Legit.
Legit?
Yeah. I think right now it's mostly popular in the gaming sense, but I think as this matures and as bandwidth gets better, it's going to revolutionize productivity in the office, because we already have video conferences with folks around the world. Now it's going to be like virtual telepresence. So we'll be able to sit in a room with our teammates who are all over the world. That's going to be
The
virtual
challenge is the hype happened so fast, so long ago, that the trough of disillusionment has been spread over decades. And we still have this awful form factor. We think we're all going to be standing around and walking into walls because we have a big black headset on.
Yeah. Hey, it's funny because I've used the latest Oculus and I've worked with a company that did VR. You just feel ridiculous with this thing on. It might be a phenomenal experience, and then I'm bonking into people and the things beside me still. Blockchain. What is it?
Legit.
Okay, what is it? Kind of describe to me.
So blockchain is a fundamental platform that enables trust and transparency because of how it stores data. It is immune to being hacked. It enables you to trust what it says without the current checks and balances, which are done by people and process and paper. And that takes a long time, and it can still be hacked. It can still be corrupt. With blockchain, it's incorruptible when implemented according to specifications.
Okay, quick show of hands. How many understood what Ed just said? Okay, we got two. Oh, we got more. Good job, Ed.
Come on, I got a 40%.
Has everybody heard of Bitcoin? That was in the news a bunch over the last couple of years. That uses blockchain. Bitcoin is not blockchain, and I think a lot of people confuse that. They think, oh, Bitcoin, that's what blockchain is. That's just one possible way you can use this technology. I think Bitcoin is why blockchain is currently in the trough of disillusionment, because people are like, oh yeah, that everybody made $1 billion and then lost $1 billion.
So all three of us are very legit on blockchain. Blockchain can be used on contracts. A good example is title companies have to do research to find out, do you own the house? Because if 50 years ago it wasn't legitimately sold, then you can't own it today. If it's all in the blockchain, then it's completely transparent. You can see who owned what. You can see who that was transferred over. Blockchain is a technology that enables that kind of transaction. So it's exciting stuff. So all three of us are legit, and we can talk about more of that later. Self-driving cars, hype or legit?
Can't wait.
I can't wait, yeah.
Okay, hype or legit? Is it?
Legit.
It's legit, it's just gonna take a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's gonna take at least a decade, but the reality is, I know we don't like to admit it, but humans are very fallible with our senses and with our processing. We've got cognitive delays, 200 milliseconds is minimum to see something. When the technology gets there, it's going to be so much safer than us.
And when there's an accident, that's what the press focuses on, and they don't tell you. I think you just talked about this stat. What was to every one self-driving car accident?
Right. For every, if you imagine if the news reported on regular everyday car crashes the way they report on Tesla car crashes, all we would see in the news is car crashes. But
So it's kind of interesting. The probability, and I'll just kind of contextualize it, the probability of you getting in a self-driving car accident is less than you getting struck by lightning on this sunny day.
Twice.
Yeah, it's
Within seconds of one another.
2 lightning strikes.
Ed is bullish.
So the data just doesn't support the fear. All right, 3D printing, legit or hype?
Legit.
I think it's getting productive too. I was telling these guys a story the other day. I got to tour Keyport a few months ago, and they showed us their 3D printer and how they were working on propeller designs for these torpedoes. And it used to take a 2-week cycle with the machine shop to change the tiniest thing on a design, and now they can have a new design printed out overnight. So it's like it's being used in industrial applications now
Right
to
now.
accelerate how we can innovate.
There's a teenager that lost his hand, and the prosthetic is thousands of dollars, and of course your healthcare has to be able to provide for that, or else you're paying for it. He was able to design and print a hand for $15 and upload the specification to the cloud and share it with everybody.
It's pretty amazing. Has anybody done 3D printing in here? Oh, good. We're
a lot of
we're
fans.
almost done, so we'll come back to the Q&A. Holograms, legit or hype?
They're going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, one of the great examples that I would say where it can be very legit is this one right here. Yeah, it's R2-D2 relaying messages from Princess Leia. No, it's the industrial application, right? You're going to wear holographic, really it's going to be contact lenses or something at some point, but if you're working on an engine or other things, you'll be able to see a blow-up diagram right in front of you that shows you step-by-step how to do it. That's going to happen. Right now, it's just the form factors aren't good. Microsoft has the HoloLens, just like VR. It's very heavy.
Yeah.
It's not there yet, but it's going to be there.
I want to flip back like 2 slides, because when we talked about this, when we went through the review, I was like Minority Report, right? You could move things around, and all your devices are listening. I went home, and my #1 recommended movie was Minority Report. And I'm like, really? That's going to show up now?
So literally what happened as we were prepping for this talk yesterday, Ed brought up that point, Minority Report. We're in a conference room. The only listening devices were our phones. And then he sent us a text message a couple hours later. Literally, Minority Report showed up as a recommended movie for him. So back 2 slides, cybersecurity.
Check
What's
those
going
settings
on
on your
there?
phone.
The Alexa, right?
Yeah. Okay, robot professors here at Olympic College.
Any professors in the room?
Any
Show of
professors
hands.
here?
Oh boy.
Okay, is this legit or is this hype?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a while, because this is the sort of thing where, you know, people are not yet used to the idea of a non-human in those kinds of roles. Same with doctors. I will say that we are already seeing now that technology is dramatically revolutionizing post-secondary education. People are having all kinds of different options for how they get educated. That might be online, it might be different types of programs. So I don't know about the in-class professor, but I do think changes are afoot.
When I went through nuclear power school in the Navy, I would argue that some of my professors were already robots.
I think, and because we work with infrastructure on the KITA Tech Committee, Kitsap, you may not know this, has one of the most advanced fiber optic networks around. They're being lit up. KPUD is doing a phenomenal job. That matters. So when you have a professor who has real strength and education and capability and wisdom to deploy, that professor now can reach almost anybody at the end of that line through broadband connections. That's the kind of innovation that I'm really excited to see. And in closing, really, we're going to get to Q&A, but perhaps technology isn't eating the world. Perhaps technology is actually saving the world. So now's the time for questions.
More questions.
So we have a bunch. Back there. Go ahead, you. Uh-huh. That's an awesome question.
is a
So let me
great
rephrase. So right now there's a thing called augmented reality, and a good example of that is if you have the Yelp app, it has a thing called monocle. You hold your phone up, and then you can look like this in monocle. It's saying, hey, there's Arby's over there, there's Boat Shed over there, there's Pizza Hut over here, and it'll show you as you move in what direction the thing you're looking at is. Data is coming to your phone through the internet wirelessly, and it's showing you. That's a simple version of augmented reality. Virtual reality is when you put the headset in and you're in a completely different space. Then the next question is, those fuse together, and then we're actually able to cybernetically or connect, and we're able to have all of that information connected to us to make decisions. Is that a fair sort of assertion? So question there is, how close are we to something like that?
10 years ago, this didn't exist. And maybe a little over 10 years ago, 2008, the iPhone came out. And now everybody has one. There's more computing power in here than the computing power we had when we landed on the moon. The computing power that's in here used to take up a space about the size of this room with full cabinets of computers to be able to do it. Moore's law is absolutely still in play. It's accelerating. This is going to disappear. We still have to literally, like a cretin, as you called me for not being on Twitter, have to like click and tap and shake this thing to get it to do something, right? We're going to absolutely have neural sensors that will not be invasive. They're not going to be screwed into our skull, but they'll be like a contact lens so that we can engage with our technology. We can engage with the refrigerator opens and there's no milk, and I'm going to be like, order me some milk, and milk is going to show up the next day, or maybe fly in that afternoon. It'll absolutely happen. When? I think it's going to be sooner than you think. I don't think it's going to be 2070. Maybe not 2040.
Well, and even interestingly enough, their ethics side of that as well. So right now, all of our phones that are smartphones connected to the web, if I say, hey Siri,
Oh, man.
look, so Siri just picked up there, Siri can pick up here. It's listening to us. So we need smart ethics people, smart humanities people, smart communicators to help shape this conversation. So we also need people who are going to come up with solutions. Like you guys brought up some great innovations of education and training and job augmentation. So next question, anybody? Let's go right there.
I was at an international convention recently, and every speaker was a speaking away, and the closing activities were just racing across the screen. Well, I know there's probably somebody back there typing manually, but now I wonder if the try to open interpreter.
Oh yeah, right now. In fact, Google Translate has a phone. There's some dedicated phones. I'll be in Japan in October, and I was thinking about getting one of these, and I'll speak to my father-in-law and say, it is great to see you, and it'll translate to Japanese in real time. As long as there's a good connection to the web, then it can do all the processing power. It could very well have been a translator that's doing that.
AI would have been very effective there doing ASL and trying to keep up with that rapid speaking person.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Question over here.
Right.
Interesting. So that's a two-part question. Number one is, a thing we didn't talk about is the Internet of Things. Toasters are connected to the Internet. Your heating sensor is connected to the Internet. Your car is connected to the Internet. What's to prevent somebody from hacking your car and taking over doing damage? Got a thought?
What's preventing someone from cranking up your toaster and burning down your kitchen? Yeah, absolutely. People are always thinking about how to weaponize things against us, and sometimes it's just a teenager down the street who's just bored, right? I don't know if blockchain is necessarily the answer. It is an answer to build in trust that can be verified because it's transparent as long as it's in a trusted group. What we haven't talked about is quantum computing, which is going to lay waste to everything that we just talked about because of the speed at which it's going to be able to do things. And that's something that the dialogue, I don't know if it's been advanced enough to answer those ethical questions. And it's really a race to who can get to quantum computing first.
Let's go. You haven't talked. Go ahead. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me tackle that one. Then I want to hear you.
I want to hear. Yeah. Okay.
So we're moving into a fourth generation of programming languages, and so I think just to be a normal developer, that job is going to be replaced by automation. So what's not going to be replaced by automation or AI or anything else? most likely not AI, is creativity. It's the ability to solve problems, to contextualize things. So software will definitely write software. Right now, you don't have to be a webmaster to go create a website. You go to something like Wix or Squarespace and you can bang out a website. So that software is writing that software. So that's going to happen more and more and more. The investment of yourself is becoming an expert in technology so you can solve the bigger problems. And then the whole world is your toolbox at that point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, especially as a software engineer, because we think we're the ones creating the technology, we're safe from it, right? But of course, it wants our jobs too. There's already AI that solves all of the major coding problems you will have on like the introductory coding tests. If you were like doing a phone screen or like you put in an application for a job, they give you 10 different questions. They've already published academic papers showing AI solving all those. So it's already writing that code from scratch to solve those kinds of problems. But I think there is as our world, as we connect more things, as the complexity increases, there's going to be always this sort of frontier where human creativity is needed to solve pressing and difficult problems. And those are going to be very hard for AI to deal with.
I'll give you an interesting moonshot example. So Jeff Bezos thinks about things very differently than we do. So Jeff said, when it comes to pollution of the planet, environmental concerns, we still need to have manufacturing, we still need to have energy, we still need to create raw materials, or take raw materials and produce materials that can be used in manufacturing. So he says, that's dirty, but our planet is beautiful. Why are we talking about moving to another planet that can't habitate our life and spending all the energy? Why don't we just move manufacturing out into space? And then we keep our planet, its jewel, and clean it up. So that's the kind of creative thinking of, wow, that's a really good point. We can't even fathom how that can happen. But the way to think about that, a robot, and for the most part, all the algorithms we know are doing a pre-programmed set of instructions or machine learning that feeds the data back into itself. So it has no power greater than all of our brain matter, or even a single one of us can do. Now, it's going to get better, like you've heard us talk about, but the problem solving and the thinking creatively is really kind of the future. Yeah.
All three mentioned you were on Technology Council here locally. What are you doing? What's your goal? What's your purpose? Are you tracking business? Are you looking for...
Well,
love that
Chair. Would you?
Yeah.
Committee chair will answer that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Throw that one at me. So the whole goal, it's an economic development group, and we're looking at the technology sector and trying to support it and understand it so that we can better market it, whether it's internally to grow from within or externally, so that we're not exporting all of our wonderful knowledge workers and these bright young students that are with their great minds, leaving to go for economic gain somewhere else.
One facet, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the 5 pillars that we're working under. Infrastructure, we want to make sure that we have a powerful technological infrastructure here so that we can do the things that we want to do. Our KPUD fiber network here in the county, because of the Navy and its redundancy, is probably one of the best networks, best kept secrets in the country. I kid you not. We have a blazingly fast fiber optic network. It's our best kept secret. Also, you own it. It's community owned fiber optic network. The next thing we're focused on is cybersecurity. Now that we're out there doing all these things, how do we make sure that we're all aware of that security? How do we market the programs that we have here at Olympic College and in partnership with Western Washington University for its 4-year cybersecurity degree? How do we market that and leverage it? We also have a local company, a startup here from Bremerton that is national, Critical Informatics, CI Security now, that is selling a managed detection and response system to healthcare and financial institutions around the country, and that's happening. The Security Operations Center is here in Kitsap. That's a wonderful thing. The third thing we're looking at is our workforce, our talent. Are we developing? We saw a raise of hands. There was very few people here that were from technology. Not uncommon, but yet we all use technology to some degree to do our jobs. So how do we develop the workforce to take advantage of technology in a better way? The fourth pillar is a partnership or a connection with the greater Puget Sound. How is Kitsap connected? 50,000 people are exported every day for economic gain. We also have some 25,000 people that come into the county for economic gain. So what's happening there? How do we make everyone aware of what assets we have here in Kitsap? I'm very bullish on Kitsap being an incubator for ideas and the intellectual property that is created by the people here. How do we leverage that? How do we build more of it? We were recently picked as the #2 most innovative, the Silverdale Bremerton area, innovative community in the country. #2. Who knew? That is based on the amount of IP per 100,000 people per capita developed here in Kitsap compared to anywhere else. Wow, where are these people? Where's that IP, right? They're squirreled away somewhere. Finally, the 5th one is innovation. How do we drive innovation, our work with Startup Kitsap, to create an ecosystem? So it's not just about small business, the people that is a service provider that might sell something to the Navy or have a yard service. Those are wonderful services. We need those small businesses. But we're talking about startups, something that really doesn't see a geographical boundary, but maybe can be sold worldwide. Maybe it's an app, maybe it's a service, something that can be sold online. And we want to drive and build that ecosystem here. So does that answer your question?
Well, let me expand on that in an interesting way. I landed here for Boxlight. So I became a database administrator for Boxlight based out of Paulsboro. Wonderful company in mid-90s. I was using some software called Onyx, which is a CRM software similar to Salesforce back in the day. I had the opportunity to be an Onyx database administrator over in Seattle for a cool company called Vizio, which was a software company before that TV company Vizio showed up. Now everybody thinks it's a TV company. No, it was a really cool software company back in the day. Microsoft bought us in 2000. So then I'm sitting in Paulsboro. My wife and I said, am I going to commute or are we going to move? We loved here. We did not want to live on the soulless east side. We wanted to live in Kitsap. So I decided to start doing that commute. So I first started going downtown, and then Microsoft moved me the convenient commute from Paulsboro to Redmond every day for 7 years. That's a long trip. It dawned on me by about year 5, I know more and I'm more connected into Seattle in the east side, Redmond and Bellevue, than I was into my own community. And that was a heavy feeling. Like I wasn't investing into students of tomorrow. I wasn't connected into the politicians that I might be able to do something to. I wasn't bringing some of the technology knowledge and help. I wasn't investing in this community. And that just was a heavy feeling. We started Startup Kitsap, and we said, we're not going to ask for permission, we're just going to do it. And we have a guiding principle, and that guiding principle is give first. So if any of you want to come to Startup Kitsap, you have an open invitation. Expect to be put to work. Don't expect to just expect to be put to work. And so that has worked really well. It has drawn some amazing people in, founders who can just go spin up a couple servers and sell their software, sell their ideas all around the world from here in Kitsap. So there's nothing stopping that from happening. There's nothing stopping an Olympic College student from transforming the world. And I believe that.
Hashtag Soulful West Side.
Yeah, Soulful West Side. Awesome. I love the question. Thank you. Any others? Pink shirt.
Kind of a changing topic, but what do you guys know about technology and how it's influencing cure diseases or
Healthcare, disease.
I heard nanomachines.
You did hear nanomachines.
That I'm excited about.
Yeah. That's legit or hype?
Oh, it's going to be a
Legit.
while. But yeah, no, there's
think legit.
this guy who he's been predicting futurist trends for the last 30 years, actually better than pretty much anybody. And one of the statements he made is by something like the 2030s, he expects nanobots to basically swim through our bloodstream and clean out most disease as it happens. That seems pretty aggressive to me, but then again, the pace of technology, it's hard to see in our lifetimes, but it's exponential.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so
look
that
at
kind
those
of
graphs.
stuff is
Age has gone up, life expectancy has gone up, mortality has gone down. Yeah. So the three of us don't really represent experience in technology and healthcare. We actually have, with Harrison Hospital, there's a lot of investment into healthcare, and I don't know how much, we've talked about this on the committee, healthcare tech, we'd love to connect to experts in the field there, but.
All I want to add is, if the movie Inner Space shows up on your Amazon watch list, anybody in this room, contact me. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
inner space. Other questions? Okay, go ahead. So those are the two statements. Did you have a question in there as well? You know what? I think you need to start a blog. Yeah. You need to come up here after we wrap up, and we need to take a picture with you because you're going to be famous someday. We have a question back there? Okay. Oh, good question. So are large tech companies inhibiting progress more than promoting it? When I came into Microsoft that first year, it was really interesting. We had the all-hands meeting, and we met over at the conference center over near Safeco Field. And it was interesting where Bill Gates went. He didn't come to all of the old people, all those seasoned software people. He loved to hang out with the young high school interns, college students. So from a cultural perspective, he was all about what is happening on those who know no bounds. So that was interesting. And culturally, during those years, he was really good. The Steve Ballmer years, it got to be really competitive as it was tougher. And now Nathan is working in Satya's years, and I think there's this resurgence, this phenomenal thing that's happening inside of Microsoft. So I'm incredibly bullish as to how Microsoft is helping innovation, not hindering it. You guys have any
I'd love to just add to that. One of the things that I've found being in an organization this big is that there just aren't very many organizations in the world that have the resources to tackle some of the things we tackle. And some of the things I talked about, like some of these accessibility things, there's no money in that. That really is because Microsoft has recognized we have the power to have tremendous change in the world, and we're just going to put money behind it and do it. That said, all large companies have, they have their slow-moving parts and they can become bureaucratic. But I've seen, in my experience anyway, I've seen overwhelmingly that it's been a positive force.
I think Facebook is facing an existential crisis right now. So if the governments of the world say, Facebook, you cannot do business the way you've been doing it, they may not make it. I think they have so much money and so many resources, they can reinvent themselves, but it's undergoing a dramatic shift today. Any other thought?
We have probably been led by large organizations and corporations for a long time, and not necessarily in a good way. P&G comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Big tobacco, big oil, a lot of money.
Monsanto.
They purchased a lot of great technology, battery technology. Years ago, they bought the patents and rights to them and stored them away because they were still selling fossil fuel engines. I am less concerned about the new startups that are growing into these large corporations like the Microsofts and the Googles and the Amazons. They're maybe not necessarily new now, but in general, relatively new. I think that the intent is to be more meaningful and to do better for humanity compared with historically what we have seen in the onset of our country and capitalism.
Question back there.
So because artificial intelligence is such a capacity to be weaponized for strategic planning, whether it's military or trade or whatever, do you expect to see any barriers with implementing that technology, whether it be governments blocking that, or implementing it, or companies blocking companies, and any potential solutions to overcome that?
So weaponizing AI at a government level.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, when we talk about optimism and pessimism around AI, I'm not pessimistic about an AI overlord. I'm not worried about that. The number one thing I am pessimistic is about it, exactly what you say, it being weaponized by bad actors to do bad things around the world. That said, You mentioned earlier the whole cat and mouse game of black hat hackers and white hat hackers. You know, there are good people doing their hardest, best work to make AI counteract that sort of thing too. So, you know, I'm pretty optimistic overall that I think it's going to be okay. To kind of answer a second part of your question, what you're getting at is kind of this thing called, in the States we call it ITAR. It's, you know, the government regulates what kind of technology can cross borders. That sort of thing already happens and has been happening for a long time, where they say, yeah, you can't take this technology into another country because we don't want it to get used by their government to, you know, spy on us or whatever. So that will probably never stop.
Yeah. Well, and with that, we can stick around. We'd be happy to answer some more questions, but I think our wonderful host, Audrey, is saying it's time to wrap up. So that is us. The deck will be made available afterwards. So if you want to connect with us, we'd be happy to chat.
That
Can we
must be
give this
Nathan's
panel
bot.
a round of applause because the amount of knowledge that we have sitting right here on the stage, they've offered that you can come up and ask them questions. Please do, because it's not often that we have this much knowledge sitting in one spot at one time, especially at Olympic College. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I think I'm pretty impressed. So before we close, I do hope that you entered our drawing. I have a little basket right here. And so what we have is a picnic basket that has adult beverage in it with a couple of wine glasses and other such things. So I am going to walk over here to Brett, and I'll let him mix it up. And then whoever names gets called, come see me afterwards, and I'll get you your. So we have Jacob Zulik.
Jacob Zulek.
Do we have Jacob here?
Jacob in the room? Oh, did Jacob leave? Oh, Jacob going
Too bad,
first.
so sad. Okay,
Okay.
one more time.
Here we go. We have Pat Kerber. All right.
Wonderful. So I'll see you. Well, you know what? I can just run it over to you right now.
Excellent.
And I think there's some cards in here. There's a bottle of wine in here. There's some luggage tags in here. So there you go. You're so welcome. Thanks for coming tonight.
All right.
Okay. So congrats to you for your drawing of the drawing. And so if you've enjoyed this presentation, BCAT has recorded the event. BCAT records all of our events very graciously for us. So we do have 4 or 5 BCAT people in the room, so if you give them a round of applause and thank them for their work. And as you exit the theater, there's a little small card like this that you will find that has the airing times. Also, it will go up on our Olympic College Foundation page under the alumni speaker, under alumni, and then the speaker series. So you can go at any time for any of the presentations that we've done and click there and find our presentation. Let's see. Our next presentation will be on Thursday, October 3rd, and Cody Russell will talk about helping all people flourish. So if you've heard anything about a trauma-informed care, things like adverse childhood experiences and how that impacts, you know, people in the community and children today. It talks about epigenetics and neuroscience, and it talks about how the brain is impacted. So if you like that type of thing, please do come. And as always, there's no cost to this event, and you're always welcome to come. So I would like to thank you once again for joining us for this evening, and these gentlemen for doing such a great job. Please stick around, and again, I didn't even tell you who I am. So I'm Audrey from the Alumni Engagement, the Olympic College Foundation. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement, and I also work on the annual giving. So thank you so much for coming, and here's your panel.
Thanks so much, everyone.